Good morning. Happy Saturday. Welcome to your early morning intuitive guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum. Here are some things to ponder today. Probably deeper things than we oftentimes ponder. But it feels like the time is right. So here we go. So we'll give it a minute for people to start popping on, but let's, as always, go with the breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Just feeling a relaxing, a releasing, a letting go, a moving smoothly into the flow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So I was up early today, 4 a.m. to be exact, and I just had a lot on my mind, and it felt like it was time to put some of it on the page. So actually journaled 2 pages, and I wanted them to be handwritten because, and I like, good morning Cindy, welcome, you're the first one here today. I like doing handwritten stuff because, not that I don't like the typing stuff too, because it does a whole different thing, I think. Handwriting gives you enough time to think through your thoughts and put them on the page, to be thoughtful, an artisan in what you're crafting, as opposed to typing, which I think allows the bleh of everything to make it onto the page. Which again has its purpose also, but I was really feeling the call to the handwriting today. So what I was doing, which leads to what we're going to be sharing today, which might be a little bit longer than usual, and I'm going to pick and choose, and so it might be a little clunky in terms of my flow. There we go. Yes, more connected to my thoughts and feelings when writing. Yes, yes, yes. And that's going to fit with what we're going to talk about today, which is Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World by Cal Newport. And he's talking mainly about business, but I'm going to apply it to life, like our jobs as a metaphor for our life. And in this particular part that I'm going to read, he's making the case for deep work. Lots of things for me got stirred up as I was reading that. I want to see what gets stirred up for you, all right? So, and my guess is none of you have this book yet, but hopefully some of you will decide to get it, because it's calling us to action. It's calling us to action in terms of looking at how we are living our lives right now and what have we lost from the past. So this is chapter 3, and it's called Deep Work is Meaningful. So I'm just going to read some parts, and then, oh, you have it on hold through life? Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And then I'm going to pitch some things. I'm going to jump from the beginning of chapter 3, where he's laying the groundwork, deep work is meaningful. And then I'm going to jump to the end of the chapter. Good morning, Janine. Welcome. That was a long delay between when Cindy hopped on and when Janine hopped on. Big gap. That's okay. We'll fill the gap. Mind the gap. So I'm going to read part of the beginning, and then I'm going to jump to the part where he's talking about the philosophy of this thing, because there were some quotes in there that made me go, ooh. So we'll see what you all think. Deep work is meaningful. Rick Furrer is a blacksmith. He specializes in ancient and medieval metalworking practices, which he painstakingly recreates in his shop, Door County Forge Works. And when I read the title, Door County Forge Works, I'm like, oh, he's from Wisconsin. And sure as heck, he is. I do all my work by hand and use tools that multiply my force without limiting my creativity or interaction with the material, he explains in his artist statement. What may take me 100 blows by hand can be accomplished in one by a large swaging machine. So basically what he's saying is, yeah, there are machines that can do what I do, but not all of what I do. This is the antithesis of my goal, and to that end, all my work shows evidence of the two hands that made it. A 2012 PBS documentary provides a glimpse into Furrer's world. We learn that he works in a converted barn in Wisconsin farm country, not far inland from the scenic Sturgeon Bay of Lake Michigan. Furrer often leaves the barn doors open to vent the heat of the forges, one suspects, his efforts framed by farm fields stretching to the horizon. The setting is idyllic, but the work can seem, at first encounter, brutish. Good morning, Deb. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. In the documentary, Furrer is trying to recreate a Viking-era sword. He begins by using a 1,500-year-old technique to smelt crucible steel, an unusually pure, for the period, form of the metal. The result is an ingot, not much bigger than 3 or 4 stacked smartphones. So just envision that in your mind. That's how big this thing is that he's going to turn into this work of art, a sword. This dense ingot must then be shaped and polished into a long and elegant sword blade. This part, the initial breakdown, is terrible, Furrer says to the camera as he methodically heats the ingot, hits it with a hammer, turns it, hits it, then puts it back in the flames to start over. The narrator reveals that it will take 8 hours of this hammering to complete the shaping. As you watch Furrer's work, however, the sense of the labor shifts. And I'm just having a download a little bit. Deb, there's a reason you're here today. Listen carefully. There's something in here for you. It becomes clear that he's not drearily whacking at the metal like a miner with a pickaxe. Every hit, though forceful, is carefully controlled. He peers intently at the metal through thin-framed intellectual glasses which seem out of place perched above his heavy beard and broad shoulders, turning it just so for each impact. You have to be very gentle with it or you will crack it, he explains. After a few more hammer strikes, he adds, you have to nudge it. Slowly it breaks down, then you start to enjoy it. At one point, about halfway through the smithing, after Furrer has finished hammering out the desired shape, he begins rotating the metal carefully in a narrow trough of burning coal. Good morning, Diane. Welcome. It looks like I missed somebody, too. Welcome to whomever I missed. As he stares at the blade, something clicks. It's ready. Have you ever had that happen where you've been kind of working something, all of a sudden you get that sense of, it's ready. Or it's finished. I'm done now. This is just that inner guidance about that. He lifts the sword, red with heat, holding it away from his body as he strides swiftly toward a pipe filled with oil, and plunges in the blade to cool it. After a moment of relief that the blade did not crack into pieces, a common occurrence at this step, Furrer pulls it from the oil. The residual heat of the metal lights the fuel, engulfing the sword's full length in yellow flames. Furrer holds the burning sword up to above his head with a single powerful arm and stares at it a moment before blowing out the fire. During this brief pause, the flames illuminate his face, and his admiration is palpable. To do it right is the most complicated thing I know how to make, Furrer explains, but it's that challenge that drives me. I don't need a sword, but I have to make them. Good morning, Gwen. Welcome, welcome. So now it's going to talk a little bit about crafts. He talks about craftsmen. I'm going to change it to craftspeople because women do this too, right? Rick Furrer is a master craftsman, in this case he's male, whose work requires him to spend most of his day in a state of depth. And that's what this whole book, that's what this whole premise is about, that we need to return to some depth, that we're all skimming the surface of life. We're doing shallow work, listening to the beeps, boops, bops of our electronic world, and we've lost the depth. Even a small slip in his concentration can ruin dozens of hours of effort. He's also someone who clearly finds great meaning in his profession. How many people out there find no meaning in their profession? They're working for a paycheck. They don't see the great value that it doesn't matter what you're doing. You're the one who elicits the value out of whatever you're doing. Remember the story of the grocery store bagger who would slip a little note, a poem, a quote, a whatever into the bottom of each bag as he was filling them. And the line at the checkout where he was bagging was long, and the lines at the other checkout were non-existent because everybody wanted this wisdom. He made that job his mission. Okay? This connection between deep work and a good life is familiar and widely accepted when considering the world of craftspeople. The satisfactions of manufacturing oneself concretely in the world through manual competence have been known to make a man quiet and easy, explains Matthew Crawford, and we believe him. But when we shift our attention to knowledge work, this connection is muddied. So when we shift to the kinds of jobs most of us do these days, on electronics, whatever, part of the issue, he says, is clarity. Craftspeople like Furrer tackle professional challenges that are simple to define but difficult to execute, a useful imbalance when seeking purpose. So simple to define, difficult to execute. Knowledge work, that's all the stuff we typically do these days, exchanges this clarity for ambiguity. It can be hard to define exactly what a given knowledge worker does and how it differs from another. On our worst days, it can seem that all knowledge work boils down to the same exhausting royal of emails and PowerPoints, with only the charts used in the slides differentiating one career from another. Furrer himself identifies this blandness when he writes, "The world of information superhighways and cyberspace has left me rather cold and disenchanted." So let me see if I want to say any more about that piece before I jump ahead. This part. Just because this connection between depth and meaning is less clear in knowledge work doesn't mean it's non-existent. The goal of this chapter that I'm reading from right now is to convince you that deep work can generate as much satisfaction in an information economy as it so clearly has done in a craft economy. So then he says he's going to make 3 arguments. I'm only going to go to the last argument because it resonates for me. These arguments roughly follow a trajectory from the conceptually narrow to the broad, starting with a neurological perspective, moving to the psychological, and ending with the philosophical. So he's basically making the case for deep work from all of these different perspectives. He says, deep work is not just economically lucrative, so you're going to get paid better if you're skilled at deep work, but it's also a life well lived. So now I'm going to jump to that philosophical part. Oops, that's too far. Hang on. That's where I am in the book. Right here. A philosophical argument for depth. Let's see. Where do I want to start? So there was a book that was published in 2011 by Dreyfus and Kelly called All Things Shining, which explores how notions of sacredness and meaning have evolved throughout the history of human culture. They set out to reconstruct this history because they're worried about its endpoint in our current era. The world used to be, in its various forms, a world of sacred, shining things, they write. The shining things now seem far away. Think about that for yourself. Are the shining things things that you can access easily, or does it feel like they've kind of gotten lost? What happened between now and then? And they spell out what they believed happened, but basically they're saying that in a post-enlightenment world, we have tasked ourselves to identify what's meaningful and what's not, but that exercise can seem arbitrary. The Enlightenment's metaphysical embrace of the autonomous individual leads us not just to a boring life it leads almost inevitably to a nearly unlivable one. Now, this author is saying, this might seem far removed from our quest to understand the satisfaction of depth, but we will discover rich new insights into the sources of meaning in professional pursuits. But I'm also going to say in life in general, what we pursue. Craftsmanship, they argue in their book's conclusion, provides a key to reopening a sense of sacredness in a responsible manner. To illustrate this claim, they use an organizing example, an account of a master wheelwright, the now lost profession of shaping wooden wagon wheels. Because each piece of wood is distinct, it has its own personality. They write after a passage describing the details of the woodwright's craft. The woodworker has an intimate relationship with the wood he works, or she. Its subtle virtues call out to be cultivated and cared for. In this appreciation for the subtle virtues of the medium, they note the craftsperson has stumbled onto something crucial in a post-enlightenment world, a source of meaning sighted outside of ourselves. The wheelwright doesn't decide arbitrarily which virtues of the wood he works are valuable and which are not. The value is inherent in the wood and the task it's meant to perform. So here's the piece that I want us to grab onto and run with. I think you're going to like this one. Oh, I see you got a post there, Cindy. Cool. And it's doing the see more thing. So I'll read it and then I'll respond when. Such sacredness is common to craftsmanship. The task of a craftsperson, they conclude, is not to generate meaning, but rather to cultivate in self the skill of discerning the meanings that are already there. Wow, wow, wow. Good morning, Teresa. Glad you are here. What that is saying is everything has value and meaning. We, as a human being, a sacred being having a human experience, our job is to discern the meaning that's already there. We don't impart the meaning on it. It's already got meaning. It's our job to discern that meaning. And I think there are groups of folks who are much better at this than others of us. And we could learn well from them, those who walk the land and work the land and have a relationship with the land. Get this better than those of us who speed across the land in our cars. So I'm going to read that little piece again. The task is not to generate meaning, but rather to cultivate in ourselves the skill of discerning the meanings that are already there. So, let me see where else I want to go with that. So, returning to the question of professional satisfaction, and I'm going to say life satisfaction, their interpretation of craftsmanship as a path to meaning provides a nuanced understanding of why the work of those like Rick Furrer, who we just talked about, resonates with so many of us. The look of satisfaction on his face as he works to extract artistry from crude materials, the philosophers would argue, is a look expressing appreciation for something elusive and valuable in our modern times. A glimpse of the sacred. A glimpse of the sacred. Once understood, we can connect this sacredness inherent in traditional craftsmanship, any kind of craftsmanship, whatever you do, whether you're a needle pointer, whether you're a runner, whether you're a gardener, whatever you are, whatever you do, finding the sacred in that. Two key observations he's going to make. The first might be obvious but requires emphasis. There's nothing intrinsic about the manual trades when it comes to generating this particular source of meaning. Any pursuit, be it physical or cognitive, that supports high levels of skill can also generate a sense of sacredness. So here he's going to do a comparison between an old-fashioned example and a current example. To elaborate this point, let's jump from the old-fashioned examples of carving wood or smithing metal to the modern example of computer programming. Consider this quote from the coding prodigy Santiago Gonzalez, describing his work to an interviewer. Beautiful code is short and concise. So if you were to give that code to another programmer, they would say, "Oh, that's well-written code." It's much like as if you were writing a poem. So he's comparing his work as a coder to being a poet. How awesome is that? Let's see, there was a part here too. Yes. So then he continues to talk about computer programming. There's a book called The Pragmatic Programmer. A well-regarded book in the computer programming field makes this connection between code and old-style craftsmanship more directly by quoting the medieval quarry worker's creed in its preface. "We who cut mere stones must always be envisioning cathedrals." So in other words, you have this big picture of what this is going to become, but it's these little bitty, messy, sweaty steps that get you there. I'm going to read that again. "We who cut mere stones must always be envisioning cathedrals." Then the book elaborates that computer programmers must see their work in the same way. Within the overall structure of a project, there is always room for individuality and craftsmanship. 100 years from now, our engineering might seem as archaic as the techniques used by medieval cathedral builders seem to today's civil engineers, while our craftsmanship will still be honored. You don't, in other words, need to be toiling in an open-air barn for your efforts to be considered the type of craftsmanship that can generate Dreyfus's and Kelly's meaning. A similar potential for craftsmanship can be found in almost all skilled jobs in the information economy. And I'm going to say in all lives, any one of us, I don't care who you are, you have that capacity for walking that sacred path with how you live your life. So what this has done is it kind of put me in the position to rethink some of the things I've been doing and be less perfunctory about them, just get this done and out of the way, and more in the moment and focusing on what's required in that moment. Again, I go back to Thich Nhat Hanh talking about the sacredness of washing dishes. Kind of amazing stuff. Let's see. There's a part in here. Yes. Okay. So basically he's saying that craftsmen oftentimes will say they don't have rarefied jobs. Throughout most of human history, a blacksmith or a wheelwright wasn't glamorous, but that doesn't matter. The specifics of the work are irrelevant. The meaning uncovered by such efforts is due to the skill and appreciation inherent in craftsmanship, not in the outcomes of their work. So again, it's the embrace the process, let go of the outcome. Embrace the process, let go of the outcome. So he says, put another way, a wooden wheel is not noble, but its shaping can be. The same applies to knowledge work. You don't need a rarefied job. You need instead a rarefied approach to your work. So then he makes a second observation. Cultivating craftsmanship is necessarily a deep task and therefore requires a commitment to deep work. Deep work, therefore, is a key to extracting meaning from your profession in the manner described. It follows that to embrace deep work in your own career or your life, and direct it toward cultivating your skill as a human walking your path, is an effort that can transform a knowledge work job or a life from a distracted, draining obligation into something satisfying, a portal to a world full of shining, wondrous things. Is that not the coolest thing ever? Ever. So basically, it is a call to action for all of us to be rethinking how we are living our lives. And are we getting the depth out of life that we need to be getting? Or are we setting ourselves up to arrive at the end of our lives, laying on our deathbed, whatever, having a host of regrets that we've skimmed the surface. We haven't dove deep. We haven't fully engaged. So, one of the things that I wrote in my journal about this was I had an epiphany last night that I haven't served as well as I could have. Given my frustrations and my judgments, I choose to be a better servant. I choose to be a better servant. Yes, the purpose of life is to live it. Live it fully. Live it fully engaged. How you doing on that? How you doing on that? A place to start, because you might look at your life and go, oh my God. A place to start would be taking some pauses from the electronics. Turn off your phone for an hour, 1 hour, and sit it somewhere and walk away and pay attention. He's got some research in the book that's pretty appalling about what do we think about when we've cut off the electronics? What do we think about? And we think about appetitive kinds of behaviors like eating and sleeping and sex, etc. But we also significantly think about getting back on our electronics. Wow. So, again, are we at that place where it has shifted from these tools being in service of us to us now being in service of those, I wouldn't even call them tools anymore. Interesting thoughts, right? Think about this stuff. Have a conversation with someone about this today. Do some journaling about it. Take a 1 hour hiatus from all electronics. No beeps, boops, or bops. Let's see what you notice. I expect that some of us will be rather uncomfortable with that. That is good to recognize. So, I bless you on your way with your deep work today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.